The opening, a town that breathes. There are places on this earth where the ground is not quite solid. Where the air carries a scent that doesn't belong. Where steam rises from cracks in the pavement like breath from an invisible mouth. Centralia, Pennsylvania, is one of those places. If you drive through Columbia County today, you might miss it entirely. The exit is unmarked. The roads that once carried miners to work and children to school are now fractured ribbons of asphalt, split open by forces from below. Grass grows through the cracks. Trees stand bare and blackened, their roots poisoned by gases that seep upward through the soil. But if you step out of your car and stand very still, you'll notice something strange. The ground is warm. Even in winter, even when snow covers the surrounding hills, the earth here radiates heat. Place your hand on certain rocks and you'll pull it back quickly, surprised by the temperature. In some places, you can see it, thin columns of steam rising from fissures in the earth, twisting upward into the Pennsylvania sky like spirits trying to escape. This is not a geothermal hot spring. This is not a natural wonder. This is a wound that will not heal. Centralia is burning. Not the buildings, most of those are long gone. Not the streets, though they've buckled and cracked. What burns is deeper. Beneath your feet, in a network of veins and chambers that spread for miles in every direction, coal is burning. It has been burning since 1962. It is burning right now, as you read these words. And it will continue burning long after we're all gone. At its peak, Centralia was home to more than 1,000 people. Families who'd lived here for generations, whose grandparents had come from Ireland and Poland and Wales to work in the mines. It was a town built on coal. Literally and figuratively. The black rock beneath the streets was both foundation and livelihood. Today, fewer than 10 people remain. The rest have scattered. The houses have been demolished or claimed by nature. The streets have been officially erased from maps. In 2002, the U.S. Postal Service revoked Centralia's zip code. In the eyes of the government, the town no longer exists. But the fire remembers. It remembers every shaft, every seam, every tunnel carved into the earth over 100 years of mining. And it follows those paths, moving slowly, patiently, consuming everything in its path with no urgency and no mercy. This is the story of how a town disappeared, not in a day, not in a single catastrophe, but gradually, quietly, over decades. This is the story of a fire that cannot be seen but can always be felt. A fire that turned home into hazard, solid ground into betrayal. This is the story of Centralia. And it begins, as so many American stories do, with good intentions and a small mistake. Before the fire, Centralia in its prime. To understand what was lost, you must first understand what Centralia was. In the early decades of the 20th century, Centralia was a modest but thriving mining town. The streets ran along hillsides, lined with narrow wooden houses painted white and yellow and blue. Churches stood at intersections, Catholic, Russian Orthodox, Methodist, serving the diverse European immigrant community that had come here seeking work. The mine whistles marked the rhythm of the day. Men descended into darkness each morning and emerged each evening, coal dust in their lungs and on their clothes, carrying the black rock that powered America's factories and heated its homes. It was hard work, dangerous work, but it was steady work. And for families who had left behind poverty and upheaval in Europe, that steadiness meant everything. Children walked to school past the breakers where older boys picked slate from coal. Women hung laundry on lines that stretched between houses, the white sheets bright against the Pennsylvania sky. On Sunday mornings, the church bells rang. On Friday nights, the bars filled with laughter and exhaustion. Centralia was not famous. It was not grand. But it was a real place, with real people, and real life. What made Centralia possible, what made it exist at all, was what lay beneath it. The coal seams here were part of the massive anthracite deposits that made northeastern Pennsylvania one of the great industrial heartlands of America. Anthracite is hard coal, clean-burning and efficient, more valuable than the softer bituminous coal found elsewhere. The veins beneath Centralia ran deep and wide, a labyrinth of black rock that had formed over millions of years. For decades, mining companies extracted this coal, carving out an underground network of tunnels and chambers. When a section was exhausted, it was abandoned. No one filled in the tunnels. No one sealed the shafts. They simply moved on to the next seam, leaving behind a honeycomb of empty space beneath the town. By the 1960s, the boom years were over. The great anthracite era was ending. Natural gas and oil were replacing coal for heating. Mines were closing. Young people were leaving for cities and suburbs. Centralia was shrinking, but it was still home. Still a place where people knew each other's names, where generations shared the same streets. The coal beneath the town was no longer being extracted, but it was still there, miles of it, waiting in the darkness. No one thought much about those old mines. They were part of the landscape, part of history. Empty tunnels, abandoned shafts, relics of a bygone era. Until something changed. Until the emptiness was filled with fire. May 27, 1962, the day everything changed. It was supposed to be routine. Memorial Day was approaching, and Centralia, like countless American towns, wanted its landfill cleaned up before the holiday. The landfill sat in an old strip mine pit on the edge of town, and it had become unsightly. Trash had accumulated. There were complaints. The solution was simple, the same solution that had worked before: controlled burning. On May 27, 1962, members of the volunteer fire department set fire to the trash in the landfill. They would let it burn for a while, then extinguish it. Clean, simple, done. But Centralia's landfill was located in a former strip mine. And beneath that strip mine, accessible through small openings and fissures, lay the entrance to an abandoned coal mine shaft. No one knew, or no one remembered, that this particular abandoned mine connected to others. That it was part of the vast underground network that honeycombed the earth beneath the entire town. The fire in the landfill burned. The trash was consumed. But before the fire could be fully extinguished, something happened that would change Centralia forever. The fire found the coal. It's difficult to say exactly how it happened. Perhaps through a crack in the rock. Perhaps through an opening that had been overlooked. But somehow, the flames reached the old mine shaft. And once they touched the anthracite coal waiting in the darkness, they found a fuel source that would last for centuries. At first, no one realized what had occurred. The surface fire was put out. The landfill appeared cold. Life continued. But underground, invisible and unstoppable, the fire was spreading. Coal fires are different from other fires. They don't roar. They don't announce themselves. They creep along seams, moving through the rock like a slow infection. They consume oxygen from the air that seeps down through cracks and fissures. They produce carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. They generate immense heat. And once established in a network of coal seams, they are nearly impossible to stop. In the weeks and months after that Memorial Day, the fire beneath Centralia moved through the abandoned mine tunnels. It followed the coal seams in every direction. It heated the rock. It filled the underground chambers with smoke and gas. And on the surface, life went on. People went to work. Children played in the streets. The seasons changed. Summer turned to fall, fall to winter. But something had been set in motion. Something patient and relentless. Something that would not stop until there was nothing left to burn. The fire had begun its long, slow consumption of Centralia. The silent threat emerges. For years, the fire was easy to ignore. There were signs, of course. Small ones at first. Steam rising from odd places. A patch of ground that stayed bare even in spring. A basement that felt warmer than it should. People noticed, but they didn't connect the observations. In a mining town, strange occurrences weren't unusual. The earth had been disturbed for generations. Subsidence, the settling and collapse of land over old mines, was a known problem. A crack in the street, a sunken yard, these things happened. But by the 1970s, the signs were becoming harder to ignore. Gardens refused to grow in certain areas. The soil was too hot, the roots of plants literally cooking in the ground. Trees began to die, their leaves turning brown in midsummer, their bark scorched from the inside out. In winter, snow would fall on Centralia like everywhere else, but in certain spots, it would melt immediately. You could see the pattern from above. White snow covering the hillside, interrupted by bare brown patches where the earth radiated too much heat for ice to exist. People began to smell sulfur. A sharp, unpleasant odor that would drift through neighborhoods on certain days, like a warning from below. And then the gases began to appear. Carbon monoxide, colorless, odorless, deadly, started seeping up through basements and foundations. Families would wake up with headaches, nausea, confusion. Some grew seriously ill. It was only when officials began testing that they discovered levels of carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide that should have been impossible. The fire was directly beneath the town now. The moment that made headlines came in 1981. A 12-year-old boy named Todd Domboski was playing in his grandmother's backyard when the ground opened beneath him. A sinkhole, sudden and deep, nearly 4 feet wide and over 100 feet deep. He fell into it, disappearing into a steaming void that exhaled poisonous gas. He caught himself on a tree root. His cousin pulled him out. When officials measured the temperature and gas levels inside that sinkhole, they found conditions incompatible with life. If Todd had fallen all the way down, he would have died within minutes, overcome by carbon monoxide and heat. That was the turning point. That was when Centralia's slow disaster became national news. Engineers and geologists arrived to assess the situation. What they found was sobering: the fire had spread throughout the underground coal seams in a complex, ever-changing pattern. It covered an area of over 400 acres. It was burning at depths ranging from a few feet to over 300 feet below the surface. And it could not be stopped. Various proposals were considered. Digging trenches to cut off the fire's path. Pumping in water or fire-retardant foam. Excavating the burning coal entirely. But each solution was either technically impossible or astronomically expensive. Estimates ran into the hundreds of millions of dollars. The government made a decision. It was cheaper to move the people than to fight the fire. In 1984, Congress allocated $42 million for relocation. Residents were offered buyouts. Some accepted immediately. Others resisted, unwilling to abandon homes that had been in their families for generations. But the danger was real and growing. The ground was unstable. The air was toxic. Staying in Centralia meant risking your life every day, never knowing when a sinkhole might open, when carbon monoxide might fill your home while you slept. One by one, families left. The exodus, a town disappears. There is a particular kind of grief in losing not just your home, but your place. For the people of Centralia, leaving wasn't like moving to a new city or a different neighborhood. It was the erasure of a community, a history, an identity that had existed for over a century. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, the exodus continued. Families took the buyout money and moved to nearby towns, Ashland, Mount Carmel, Bloomsburg. They found new houses, new jobs. But they left behind something irreplaceable. The houses they left were demolished. Not because they were damaged, but to prevent people from returning. Block by block, Centralia was dismantled. Structures that had stood for decades were reduced to rubble and hauled away. Foundations were filled in. Yards returned to wilderness. The streets remained, at first, empty corridors lined with nothing. Sidewalks leading nowhere. Street signs marking intersections that no longer existed. Churches closed. The last school had already shut its doors. Businesses, the few that remained, packed up and left. The most painful part for many residents was the cemetery. It still stands, the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary Cemetery, on a hillside overlooking what used to be the town. Graves dating back to the 1800s, generations of families buried together. The dead remained while the living scattered. Some former residents returned to tend the graves. They drive from wherever they've settled now, park along the cracked road, and walk among the headstones. From here, you can see the steam rising from the valley below, the earth breathing its toxic breath. A handful of residents refuse to leave. Through legal battles and sheer stubbornness, they maintained their right to stay. At its lowest point, fewer than 10 people remained in Centralia. They live in houses scattered across the hillside, islands of defiance in a landscape of absence. They say the fire isn't a danger where their houses stand. That the seam beneath them has already burned out or never extended that far. Maybe they're right. Or maybe they simply refuse to let go of the only place they've ever called home. In 2002, Pennsylvania Governor Mark Schweiker issued an official condemnation order, seizing all property in the borough through eminent domain. In 2009, Centralia's zip code, 17927, was officially retired. Mail addressed to Centralia would now be routed through neighboring towns. In the eyes of the government, Centralia ceased to exist. But something stranger happened, Centralia became famous. As the town disappeared from maps, it appeared in stories. It became a curiosity, a destination for urban explorers and the curious. Word spread about the graffiti-covered section of Route 61, the highway that once ran through Centralia but had been closed due to fire damage and then claimed by visitors as a canvas for spray paint. Thousands of people now visit Centralia each year, more than ever lived there. They come to see the steam vents, to walk the abandoned roads, to stand on ground that might give way at any moment. They come to witness a place that shouldn't exist but does. A town that is gone but not gone. A place where absence has become presence. What remains, walking through ghosts. If you visit Centralia today, you'll find a landscape caught between existence and erasure. The main landmark is the Graffiti Highway, the abandoned stretch of Route 61 that was closed in the 1990s when the underground fire caused too much damage to the road bed. Over the years, visitors have covered every inch of the buckled asphalt with spray paint, names, dates, images, messages. It's become a strange kind of memorial, a palimpsest of contemporary graffiti layered over a disaster from decades past. The road itself is cracked and warped, heaved up by the heat and pressure from below. In places, steam rises directly through fissures in the pavement. Walk on it during winter and you'll see snow covering the hillsides on both sides of the road, but the road itself, or parts of it, remain clear, the ground too warm for snow to settle. Beyond the highway, there are no street signs pointing you toward the town center because there is no town center. What streets remain are fragmentary, cracked ribbons of asphalt leading into forest. Nature is reclaiming everything with aggressive speed. Trees grow where living rooms once stood. Vines climb the few remaining structures. But the grid of streets is still visible if you know how to look. You can trace where houses stood by the slight depressions in the ground, by the remnants of foundations hidden under vegetation, by the placement of fire hydrants that serve no purpose now. There are 4 churches still standing, the last holdouts against complete erasure. They're maintained by the few remaining residents and former residents who refuse to let them go. They stand empty most of the time, their doors locked, their congregations scattered or dead. And then there are the steam vents. They're everywhere once you start looking. Thin columns of vapor rising from cracks in the earth, from holes between rocks, from the edges of the old highway. On cold days, they're more visible, like breath in winter air. Place your hand near one and you'll feel the heat, smell the faint sulfur odor of underground combustion. Some areas have been marked with warning signs: danger, underground mine fire. Walking or driving in this area could result in serious injury or death. The signs are old now, faded and pockmarked with bullet holes from target practice. Even the warnings are becoming part of the landscape's decay. The few remaining residents live quietly. Their houses are scattered, separated by empty lots where neighbors once lived. Some have been interviewed over the years, explaining why they stay. The answers vary: stubbornness, attachment, principle, defiance. But they share a common thread: this is home, and they won't be driven out. One woman in her 90s said she'd lived in her house for over 60 years. She raised her children there. Her husband died there. The fire was beneath other parts of town, not hers. Why should she leave? Another resident explained that he didn't believe the fire was as dangerous as officials claimed. That it was overblown, an excuse for the government to take the land. Whether they're right or wrong doesn't really matter. What matters is that they remain, living above an inferno, witnesses to something the rest of the world has tried to forget. Standing in Centralia is a strange experience. It's quiet, genuinely quiet, in a way that inhabited places never are. No cars pass. No voices carry from neighboring houses. Just wind through trees and the occasional hiss of steam finding its way to the surface. And beneath your feet, always, the knowledge that something is burning. The ground is warm. Not everywhere, but in enough places that you notice. You become hyper-aware of where you're standing, watching for steam, for cracks, for any sign that the earth might be unstable. It's the silent danger that makes Centralia so unsettling. A fire you can't see but can feel. A threat that doesn't announce itself but is always present. The town is gone, but the disaster continues. The fire that won't die. The fire beneath Centralia has now been burning for over 60 years. Geologists and mine fire experts have mapped its progress as best they can, using temperature readings, gas analysis, and remote sensing. What they've found is both remarkable and terrifying. The fire moves through the underground coal seams in an unpredictable pattern, sometimes advancing quickly, sometimes smoldering in place for years. It follows the coal wherever it goes. The anthracite deposits beneath this region are extensive, part of a vast coal basin that spans multiple counties. The fire has access to an almost unlimited fuel supply. Over the decades, there have been periodic efforts to assess whether the fire could be extinguished. Each time, the conclusion is the same: it's too expensive, too complex, too late. In the 1960s, when the fire was first recognized as a serious problem, it might have been stopped with aggressive intervention. Digging trenches, excavating burning coal, flooding certain sections. But that window closed quickly. By the time serious action was considered, the fire had spread too far. Estimates for extinguishing the fire have ranged from $50 million to over $600 million, depending on the method. And even those figures come with no guarantee of success. The fire exists in 3 dimensions, spread throughout a complex underground network. Stopping it in one location doesn't prevent it from continuing in another. So the fire burns on. Current projections suggest it could continue for another 250 years or more. Some estimates say it might burn for centuries beyond that. The truth is, no one really knows. There's no precedent for an underground coal fire of this size and duration. What we do know is that the fire is patient. It doesn't consume the coal quickly, like a forest fire racing through dry brush. It smolders, moving slowly through the seams, generating intense heat but limited flame. In some areas, the coal burns completely, leaving behind empty voids that eventually collapse. In other areas, the fire creeps forward at a pace measured in feet per year. The fire breathes. It draws oxygen from the surface through cracks and fissures, exhales carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide and sulfur dioxide through those same openings. It heats the rock around it, sometimes to temperatures exceeding 1000 degrees Fahrenheit. And it waits. There's something almost alive about the fire, something patient and intelligent in how it finds new fuel, new paths, new ways to continue. It's not alive, of course. It's a chemical process, combustion sustained by available oxygen and combustible material. But standing above it, feeling the warmth through your shoes, watching steam rise from the earth, it's hard not to think of it as a creature. A dragon sleeping beneath the town, breathing heat and poison, impossible to kill. Centralia is not unique. Underground coal fires burn all around the world, in China, India, Australia, Indonesia. Some have been burning for decades, some for centuries. They represent a particular kind of environmental disaster, slow, persistent, nearly impossible to stop. But Centralia is unique in one way: it destroyed an entire American town. It didn't happen in a day. There was no single catastrophic event, no moment when everything ended. Instead, it was gradual erosion, of ground, of community, of possibility. Year by year, the town became less viable. Year by year, more people left. Until finally, there was no town left to speak of. Just fire. Just heat rising from the earth. Just absence where presence used to be. The closing, lessons from the earth. There's a reason Centralia haunts us. It's not because of what happened, there are disasters far more sudden, far more deadly. It's because of how it happened. Slowly. Quietly. Invisibly. The fire beneath Centralia is a reminder that not all catastrophes announce themselves. That sometimes danger exists beneath the surface, literally and figuratively, burning away the foundation of everything we've built while we go about our daily lives unaware. It's a reminder that the ground beneath our feet, the thing we take for granted as the most solid, most reliable thing in the world, can betray us. For the people who lived in Centralia, the earth was everything. It provided coal, which provided work, which provided community and purpose and identity. Generations of families built their lives on what the earth contained. And then the earth turned against them. Not through earthquake or flood or volcano, but through something they themselves had begun. A small fire, a routine cleanup, a moment of inattention. And the consequences continue decades later. There's a lesson in that about unintended consequences. About how small actions can have enormous, lasting impacts. About the importance of understanding the systems we interact with, in this case, the vast underground network of abandoned mines beneath the town. But there's another lesson too, something deeper. Centralia reminds us that some wounds don't heal. That sometimes, when we make a mistake, we can't fix it. We can only live with the consequences, adapt to them, move away from them. The fire can't be stopped. It will burn until the coal is exhausted, and that won't happen in our lifetimes or our grandchildren's lifetimes. It's a permanent scar on the landscape, a permanent testament to how things can go wrong and stay wrong. And yet, life continues. The people who left Centralia built new lives elsewhere. The handful who remain have found ways to coexist with the danger. The forest is reclaiming the land. Nature doesn't care about human disasters, it simply adapts, grows over them, incorporates them into a new ecology. If you visit Centralia now, and thousands do each year, you'll find it strangely beautiful. The empty roads disappearing into forest. The graffiti highway with its layers of color and meaning. The steam rising from the earth like something out of a dream. The profound quiet of a place that used to be home. It's a landscape of absence and presence. A place that no longer exists but refuses to disappear completely. Standing there, feeling the warmth through your shoes, smelling the faint sulfur in the air, watching steam twist upward into the Pennsylvania sky, you become acutely aware of what's beneath you. Miles of burning coal, moving slowly through the darkness, generating heat that will outlive everyone alive today. You become aware that the earth has depths we can't see. That beneath the surface, things are always moving, always changing, sometimes in ways we can't control or even comprehend. And you become aware, perhaps most of all, that home is fragile. That the places we build our lives around can disappear. That sometimes through dramatic catastrophe, but sometimes, as in Centralia, through slow erosion. Through a fire that doesn't roar but whispers. Through ground that doesn't collapse all at once but softens degree by degree until one day it can no longer support the weight of what we've built upon it. Centralia is a ghost town, but it's haunted by something stranger than ghosts, it's haunted by presence. By the fire that continues. By the handful of residents who refuse to leave. By the thousands of visitors who come to see what absence looks like. By the knowledge that beneath this quiet hillside in Pennsylvania, something is burning and will continue burning long after we're all gone. It's a place where the earth breathes. Where solid ground reveals itself as temporary. Where home becomes memory. And where, even now, the fire waits beneath your feet, patient, persistent, and impossible to stop. If you listen carefully, standing in that profound quiet, you might almost hear it. The slow crackle of burning coal, the hiss of heated rock, the whisper of a disaster that never ends. Just the earth, burning. Just time, passing. Just a place that was, and is, and will be, for centuries to come, forever changed by a single day in May, when a small fire found the darkness beneath the town and decided to stay.